The latest tech.
I'm Alexa. I can answer your questions.
Interviews.
And we are evolving, and we are seeing an amazing opportunity that's happening.
Accessibility.
Accessibility is one of our core values.
This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome to another edition of Double Tap TV. Thank you guys so much for being here along with us for the ride. We are talking all about very, very cool products today, and that is keyboards. But before we get to that and before we get to my co-host, I want to invite you guys to join us for the ride. It is feedback@doubletap.online. That is our email address, of course. And on Twitter, we are at DoubleTapCanada. And if you use the hashtag AskDoubleTap, we will do our best to get to your emails on future shows. Stephen Scott, thank you for being here. So excited to be with you guys here every single week on Double Tap TV. I'm already tired, but I love doing this, so there's no excuses, Stephen, no excuses.
You're tired? Why? How can you be tired when we're talking about keyboards? I'm holding up a keyboard, Mark.
Keyboards!
Oh, I love keyboards.
Oh my God. You know what's funny is that I think back to one of those most memorable moments in tech in our history, which is when Steve Jobs unveiled the iPhone and talked about keyboards and styluses and how they're so yesterday. But it's amazing how such a simple input device, being the keyboard, will never go away. There's always a reason for us to want to get a keyboard or to want some other form of input on these magnificent touch-free devices. I mean, touch-screen devices. We want another form of input. And I find that hilarious how we're constantly moving forward, yet moving back, right?
I know, it is crazy, isn't it? I mean, I've spent years trying to find the perfect keyboard for my phone, which doesn't have a keyboard. I think it's because, I loved the BlackBerry. I loved BlackBerry because it had that wonderful keyboard that's never been replicated since on any phone, and I guess never will. Because, let's be honest, people are quite happy using their touch screens. So, why would you go backwards? But, a lot of us do like using our smartphones and our iPads and, touch devices with keyboards. And it makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because especially from a productivity point of view, trying to write a long email or, your work of art that is your life story into something, that's not easy to do in a touchscreen. So, to avoid the sore thumbs problem, you want to probably have something physical to type on, and you want something good to type on. And that has been my lifelong mission, to find that product.
Well, this is the interesting part, because when the iPad was released and when, touch devices were released, obviously we've got the on-screen keyboard, which is as good as it's going to get, I think. And I think people are definitely getting used to it. But there's definitely no replacement for that tactile feel of a physical keyboard, where you can really identify where the keys are on the keyboard. The word touch type is true, because you don't have to look down to know where the actual keys are. Whereas on a software keyboard, every device has its little nuances and has their, little intricacies that make it more difficult or easier depending on the device you're using. And it's hard to keep track of that. As I switch back and forth between Android devices that I test and, of course, iOS devices, every single device, depending on the size, has a different keyboard layout or different spacing, so it's harder to find those keys. So while I joke about the fact that we yearn for a physical keyboard, I totally get it, Stephen, and I get your flashback to the BlackBerry days. It took my BlackBerry to completely die while I was on vacation for me to switch to a touchscreen device. That's what did it. I wasn't going to part with it other than that particular moment, and I happened to be away for 10 days, and this was 2 days into me being gone. So I forced myself to get used to the touchscreen device. Other people, I know people today who are still using a BlackBerry Classic, which is one of the more recent, touchscreen, BlackBerry devices that was designed by TCL, because it still has that patented keyboard. And they will not, I swear, Stephen, it will take a catastrophe for them to release their clutches on these devices. But I totally get it. So when it comes to productivity and when it comes to these devices becoming smarter and almost PC replacements, computer replacements, I get the need for a keyboard. So do you have a favorite?
Oh, I have many. It's been so difficult to pin this down. You said to me, look, let's talk about keyboards. I know you're obsessed with them. Let's talk about the ones you like. And to be honest, I was struggling. to think about the ones to pick out to talk about. The thing for me was, growing up, one of the downsides and also upsides to being visually impaired was that you were taught touch typing. And the reason I was taught touch typing, you think, well, it's a good skill to have, and it is, it's a brilliant skill to have. Bear in mind, I was taught this because the expectation was I would only ever work in some kind of secretarial role. I was never going to get a job, an actual, job as like, I don't know, doing this, for example. This was just ridiculous, right? You're not going to do that. So for that reason, touch typing was kind of forced on a lot of us as visually impaired people as a skill, but actually it was a brilliant skill to end up with, because I'm so glad I've got it. And I can bamboozle you. That's the word I'm trying to find. Not easy, but it's in there. I'm going to bamboozle you by telling you this. I can touch type on my iPhone with the screen off.
Wow. Okay, that's
and I can
impressive.
get the words perfectly. Yeah, we should do this on air. We should show you this. But it is, I can do it, and that's the reason, because I've got it in my head where everything is. So I don't need to look at the keys at all. I can type away merrily, and I can do it even on a touch screen, which is brilliant. I'm very excited to share with you my thoughts on keyboards this week. The one I didn't get around to talking about this week that I'm kind of hesitant to mention because there's a few issues with it, but I do like it, is the Logitech K380. And the reason I like it is because it's laptop size, it's portable, it's Bluetooth, and it can connect with multiple devices at once. But on that topic, Mark, Logitech has something far better that I wanted to show you this week.
So let's do that, Stephen. Let's take a quick break and come back here and share all this really cool hardware. It is Double Tap TV. He is Stephen Scott. I am Mark Aflalo. Get involved by emailing feedback@doubletap.online. And of course, on Twitter, we are at DoubleTapCanada with the hashtag AskDoubleTap. We'll take a quick break and come back with some really cool keyboard hardware here on Double Tap TV.
Love Double Tap TV? Listen to AMI Audio for Double Tap Canada every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern for news and reviews on everything tech. This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome back to Double Tap TV. We're talking all things keyboards. Get involved. Feedback at doubletap.online, and on Twitter we are at DoubleTapCanada with the hashtag AskDoubleTap. Stephen, you are I think, borderline obsessed when it comes to keyboards for your devices. So let's dive into your obsession, please, sir.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. I am a bit obsessed with keyboards. I don't know where it started. I don't know where it will end. But what I can tell you is I think I may have found the perfect keyboard. This might be the last one I buy. I know, shocking, eh? Well, I don't know if it will be the last one I buy, to be honest. I say this every single month to myself, and then something else comes along, and I think, oh, that's even better. But let me tell you why I think this one's good. This is MX Keys. This is from Logitech. This is their new range. This particular model is for the Mac, so it's the MX Keys for Mac. And the reason I've chosen this one to show you today is because it has a number of features in it which are really useful if you use more than one computer, or you use a keyboard for a PC, and say your iPhone. This is really useful. Okay, so here's the thing. If I wanted to, I'm able to connect this to my MacBook, my PC, and my iPhone all at the same time, and I'm able to easily switch between those devices just by a couple of keys on the keyboard. I mean, that is what you want, isn't it? If you're going to be multitasking, you want your technology to be multi-function. This keyboard is a really solid keyboard. It's well built, it's heavy, it's got a bit of heft to it, Mark. I like a bit of heft in my keyboard. And what I love is it's completely customizable as well. So here we have, along the very top of the keyboard, all these lovely function keys. Now, of course, if you're using JAWS, you're going to be using F1 to F12 for your standard operating procedure for your software. So for example, if you want to open up the list of links on Google Chrome, instead of having to navigate through them all, you just hold down Insert and you press F7 and it brings up your list of links. So function keys are really important for a PC. On a Mac though, you might not use your function keys as much. So you can actually set these keys to do a whole wide range of different things. You could have a modifier key plus another command that you've chosen to put together. Maybe you've customized a keyboard setting you have to hold down two keys for. Well, you can just turn it into one using this. Or if you want to launch an application like Mail or Safari, or any other kind of application, you can actually assign it to these individual function keys. Now, because this is an extended keyboard, you actually have additional function keys on the right-hand side, just above the numpad. So as well as having your numpad, you know, keys 1 to 9 and all your plus and minuses and everything else, you've got those 4 additional customizable function keys, which is absolutely fantastic. And all of this can be operated through the Logitech Options suite, which is available from Logitech to download for Windows or for Mac. Now, you have to install Logitech Options on every device you want to use this with, so you can decide how you want this keyboard to operate. Now, let me give you some examples of that. And this is how sort of level of customization you can have, as well as not only choosing what each and every individual key here does, you can also swap them around. So if you don't want to use these kind of function keys as special keys or special access keys or, you know, combination keys to do something, you don't need to do that. You can have them set to be F1 to F12, like, as I mentioned, using Windows. So I don't want it to be set so that I can open up applications on my PC. I just want to be able to get to F1 to F12 by one touch, not having to hold down the function key as well. So for that, I can go into the settings on the program, on the Logitech Options software, and I can tick the box which says use my function row keys as a function row F1 to F12 as opposed to the standard setup, which is those special keys. Now, this also has backlight function as well. Again, controllable, customizable. You can have as much backlight illumination as you want. You can turn that down as well if it's too bright for you. For those with low vision who just want to be able to find a key, especially, for example, on the number row key, you often find trying to find number 5 or 6 if you're not using the number pad, then that can be quite challenging. But just by hovering your hands over the keyboard, there's a sensor on the keyboard that will sense your hands coming close, and it will start to illuminate the keyboard. We're not seeing that at the moment with this keyboard I've got in front of me because of the big lights we have in the studio here. So you're not going to see that, unfortunately. But that is how it works. Really smart, really clever, easy to use, and it's all charged up with a simple USB-C cable. And the battery, it tells me, will last a year, so we shall see. This one I want to show you is another one I love, and the reason I've gone for this is the Brydge Pro keyboard. This is for the iPad Pro 2020. It's because I need something on the move as well, so this isn't just about, you know, being at home, as I am at the moment, obviously working from home. You know, when I'm back out on the move again, I want to be able to take my iPad with me and use it like a laptop, and this allows me to do that. What I like about this in comparison to, say, the other Magic keyboard that comes for the iPad is that, you know, the keyboard itself is kind of set back from the front edge. If we bring in the original iPad keyboard and I sit it next to it, what you notice is that the keyboard is right at the very front of the setup. So when I go to type, as soon as I put my fingers on the very front edge of this keyboard, I'm on the space bar. There's no recess at all. Whereas on the Brydge keyboard, I do have that, and I have a bit of a recess, a bit of a wrist rest there, and I'm able to start typing. The typing difference between these two, and I'm not comparing them, but just showing you, the typing difference is pretty big. You've got quite a low key travel. Some people like that on the iPad one from Apple. You can type, and it's quite a noisy, clacky keyboard, but at the same time, sometimes I don't even know if I'm touching the keys or they're actually hitting the keys down because they don't even feel like they're moving. Whereas I go to the Brydge keyboard, and as I'm typing, yep, equally as clacky, maybe a bit quieter, but at the same time, I know I'm pressing those keys. The other thing I love as well about the Brydge keyboard, something you don't get with the Apple keyboards, is a function row key. Yes, my function row key's back. Maybe less important, I guess, on an iPad, but still a really lovely function to have. And again, for someone who's blind, having that tactile ability to go to a button, to pause music, to change the volume or adjust the brightness is really key. So I have gone for this, the Brydge keyboard, and for those who are wondering how the iPad itself connects in, really simple. All we do is we take our iPad, we simply just take it to the little hinges at the very top that are sticking out of the device, and we slot in the iPad, and then what happens is your iPad essentially turns into a laptop. And suddenly on the move, I can type, I can use it with VoiceOver, I can do what I want to do, I've got access to my function row key, and I have a beautiful keyboard recessed in, plenty of room, nice key travel, keys are widely spaced. Lovely. So for now, those are my keyboards that I like and love. It may change, but that's where I am at the moment. The MX keys for Mac and the Brydge Pro keyboards for iPad.
Stephen, I love how you said those are your favorites for now, because you know, just like I do, that in a month from now and a year from now, they're going to come out with something even cooler than those two devices. And I've got two up my sleeve that I want to talk about. So let's take a quick break. It is Double Tap TV. Get involved. Feedback at doubletap.online. On Twitter, we are at DoubleTapCanada with the hashtag AskDoubleTap. What are your favorite keyboards for your touchscreen devices? Well, mine are coming up in just a moment here on Double Tap TV.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome back to Double Tap TV. Thank you guys so much for being here. Stephen Scott, okay, you're keyboard crazy. I get it.
Yep.
I'm kind of in the same boat as you, not as obsessed, I don't think, but when they announced certain keyboard accessories, especially for the iPad, I, of course, jumped because I, like everybody else, wish that one day the iPad is going to be an adequate computer replacement. I think that's coming. I think we'll get to that point one day. I don't know when, but thanks to some devices like the one I'm holding in my hand over here, I think we're going to get to that point sooner than later. Do you not?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's there yet, but I think Apple especially is moving towards a place where the MacBook and the iPad will fuse into one device. And the keyboard is going to be at the heart of that. We know this because of the trackpad. I mean, the trackpad kind of gives it away. We can see the importance of the keyboard. We see the importance of the trackpad. And essentially that old tech we were talking about earlier is coming into modern tech, and it will remain there for some time. I'm really intrigued to see what you've got there, though, Mark. What are you holding? I love new gadgets. Please tell me.
Well. So here's the thing: is Apple? Apple's been on this road for quite some time. So when they've released their latest generation iPad Pros, which I'm holding in my hand, I'm holding the 11-inch iPad Pro in my hand. They added those smart connectors on the back of the device at various points. On the bottom when you're in portrait mode, and of course on the side as well. You've got this smart connector, which really is just kind of flush in the back of the device, and it allows it to seamlessly connect magnetically to accessories. And one of the first accessories they announced with this year's generation is this smart keyboard case. Now, on the surface, number one, it's a pretty heavy device. It's actually on par with the weight of the actual iPad 11-inch itself. So imagine when you put these two devices together, you're getting almost, laptop weight, quite honestly. So it makes sense that you're going to get some of those features. The interesting thing about this, it's made with Apple's kind of silicone rubbery feel. It pops open and magnetically connects your iPad Pro to the case. So I'm going to show you the case over here, and it literally pops magnetically onto it thanks to, I think there's like 100 plus magnets. And it keeps it quite beautifully on the stand. When you look at it from the side, you can see it has this kind of interesting angle, and you can actually tilt the top of the iPad back, and it really does give you this kind of computer, almost iMac type feel with it. So you get this keyboard, which has an embedded trackpad in it right there on the actual case itself, and you could tilt that screen back so that when you're looking at it sideways, you're working at a really nice, comfortable, ergonomic angle. And of course, because of the design of this case, take your Apple Pencil out, and it still magnetically stays nice and put at the top of the iPad and charges wherever you go, which is good because it gives you that access. But at the same time, I find it a little bit bad because it doesn't protect the pencil, and you could still kind of knock it off, and then you don't know where it is if you've dropped it on the floor somewhere and you don't realize that you actually did that. So definitely an interesting contender. I know you have questions about this, Stephen, so I'll stop talking for a moment.
Well, I do, because I got the one which doesn't have the trackpad, and I guess my question is, in comparison to something like the MacBook, and the MacBook is known for having its large touchpad surface, have you used the trackpad with it, and what are your feelings on an iPad with a trackpad?
Well, I definitely use the trackpad when it comes to office type work. So if I'm working on a document or, a keynote presentation, I find myself cutting and pasting way quicker than I would if I had to touch the screen. I do love the mix between using the trackpad and touching the screen. I find that a very natural, intuitive way to use the iPad. It's something we've been waiting for quite some time. I mean, Microsoft has been doing this with the Surface for, 5 or 6 generations at this point, which is kind of interesting. The biggest, honestly, honestly, Steven, if I had to find something that was bad about this case, is that it doesn't let you wrap around the keyboard so that you could still kind of hold the iPad in its portrait mode or its landscape mode.
It's interesting. I like the idea of it being in that landscape mode all the time, because that's the closest you're going to get to a laptop experience. It would have been nice if they could have given you the option to flip it. Some apps, for example, don't work only in landscape mode. They require you to be in portrait mode, and that could be annoying.
Yeah, no, definitely it can. So Stephen, in my hand here is this nice materially type plastic design from Logitech. And this is called the Folio Touch. And it's designed for, obviously, the 11-inch and the larger version of the new iPad Pros. It's got that big camera cutout, so if you've got that LiDAR camera there, it's compatible as well. It snaps into place, so as opposed to magnets, you have to snap it into kind of the rubberized, I guess, the rim around the edges, you would call it. So you literally just snap it into place here, and it goes in quite nicely. It has a little spot at the top, a little divot where you could put your Apple Pencil to charge. But because this is a folio case, it fully closes and has a little flap around the edge that's magnetic that not only protects the device from opening, but also keeps your pencil in place, which is something that Apple didn't even do, which is kind of interesting. When you want to use the keyboard, you literally open the flap over here, you open the keyboard case. It's hard to do in midair, much easier to do on a table. But you pop open the kickstand to the desired height that you want, and then you can work on the iPad any way, shape, or form. You actually have a bigger trackpad on this than you do on Apple's own accessory. If you take a look over here, you still get a full backlit QWERTY keyboard, and of course that really large trackpad, which works as seamlessly as Apple's own device. And as I talked about the downfall of the other Apple own accessory, this flips entirely behind, so you can still use the iPad in one hand, writing notes or just kind of consuming media, and it's easily half the weight of Apple's own Folio keyboard.
That sounds really nice. And I'm wondering about the Logitech versus the Apple. One of the things that I went for with the Brydge Pro keyboard for my iPad Pro, one of the things that I liked about it most was that function row key still being there. Is that the case with the Logitech?
You know what? You bring up something that I don't even pay attention to on a normal day. And when you look at this one, there is a function row, but it's not your traditional F keys. There's its own function row here. So when you're looking at this keyboard here, you can see how you've got your backlit, and you've got your home button, and you've got various other, keys that are accessible to you. Play, fast forward, volume up, lock, and screen brightness and keyboard brightness, but no traditional function keys like you would expect on a regular, full-size keyboard.
Which is fine, right? Because for an iPad, you probably wouldn't use F1 to F12 for anything, but having that physical function row key set is great, especially for someone like me who prefers to have actual tactile buttons to press than always having to find that particular menu on the device. So yeah, I think that's a real positive, and that's something that I just wish Apple could implement, but they don't. They've seemed to have moved away entirely from it. Even on the MacBook line, we're moving away from it, moving towards Touch Bar on MacBook Pros, and the MacBook Air, my MacBook Air that I got recently, that one is the only one that now has an actual function row key, physical keys on it, which is obviously the way it's now going.
So if you guys have something you want to talk about, especially when it comes to these accessories, please let us know on our social media. We're going to be posting links to absolutely everything. If you want to get involved, again, the email address feedback@doubletap.online, and on Twitter we are @DoubleTapCanada, and use that hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap. I am Marc Aflalo on behalf of Steven Scott. Thank you guys so much for being here this week. We will speak to you again next week here on Double Tap TV.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. Hosted by Marc Aflalo and Steven Scott. Editing Will Attar. Production assistants Wendy Kaufman. Content review Zachary Aflalo. Voiceover Anna Vicino. Integrated Described Video Specialist Ron Rickford. Coordinating Producer Jennifer Johnson. Director Production Karen Nye. Director Programming Brian Perdue. VP Content Development and Programming John Melville. President and CEO David Arrington. Copyright 2020 Accessible Media Inc.